All right, here we go. Day 2 of factoring trinomials. So we're going to start it off the same way we did yesterday. So 3A Part 2 notes. Let's start off by seeing if we can find a product, two numbers that have a product of 54, so multiply to give you negative 54, and then a sum, meaning they add, to give you negative 15. So if you try that for a second, let me just show you one of the most common mistakes that I see here. People make up their table, say, all right, I'm looking for two numbers that'll multiply to give me negative 54 and add to give me negative 15, and they think, all right, well, 9 and 6. But here's the problem. If you do negative 9 times negative 6, okay, negative 9 plus negative 6 is a negative 15, but the problem is right here. What is a negative times a negative? Well, it's not a negative. That would be a positive 54, okay? So this is a problem here. Now, when we're doing these notes today, it's the same process that we did yesterday in the 3A Part 1 notes. The only difference here is that we will now have a negative number, which means one positive and one negative, right? So we can't just switch this and say, well, 9 times negative 6, right? That'll give us the negative 54, but it will no longer add to be a negative 15. That will be a positive 3 or a negative 3, depending on where our negative is. So run through a few more factors, and eventually you'll find out that it is negative 18 times 3. Okay, negative 18 times a positive 3 is a negative 54, and then negative 18 plus 3 is a negative 15. All right, so like I said, very similar to what we did yesterday. We will have a negative number here at the end now, so a negative c, and all that means is that when we're doing our table, one will be positive and one will be negative. And that's just because the only way you can get a negative number is a negative times a positive, okay? Yesterday, or in the previous day's notes, this number was a positive. So if this is positive, you can get that two ways, either positive times positive or negative times negative. But since this number is a negative now, the only way we can get a negative is if our signs are different, so one positive and one negative. So when we write our answers now, we'll have one that looks like x plus a number, and then x minus a number. And they can be switched. We can have the minus first and the plus second. That doesn't matter, but what does matter is that our signs will be different now. Same process though. So let's go ahead and get started on some of these examples. First up, negative 10. So I'm going to put my negative 10 over here. Remember, we don't want to get these mixed up, okay? We're looking for numbers that will multiply to give us the last number and add to give us the middle number. Okay, because we can find two numbers that multiply to give us 9 and add to give us 10, but we don't want to get these backwards. So multiply to give us negative 10 and add to give us negative 9. Well, 10 only has two sets of factors. It's either 1 and 10 or it's 2 and 5. And if we look at negative 2 times 5, negative 2 plus 5 gives us 3. So if we switch those signs and say a negative 5 and a positive 2, the only thing that's going to change when we're adding them together is our answer will, instead of being a positive 3, it'll be a negative 3. All right, so either way, neither of those gave us a negative 9, so that means we need to go to the other set of factors for 10, which is negative 10 times 1. Negative 10 plus 1 gives us negative 9. Okay, so that's the answer we were looking for. Multiply to give us negative 10 and add to give us a negative 9. Now, the other thing, well, let's write this down here and I'll talk about a couple things here. X minus 10, right, the negative goes with the 10, and x, it's a positive 1, so x plus 1. Now, you can have those switched, but what you can't do is just switch the 10 and the 1. The sign has to go with it, so x plus 1, x minus 10 would also be acceptable. Either one of these, you don't have to write them both down. Either one would be correct. Now, one thing I want to point out to you, this is just one of those things you could do to check your work, is that if we're multiplying these to get a negative number, our signs have to be different. So one thing you can do to kind of just double check is whatever your middle sign is, so this is a negative 9, that has to go with your bigger number. So see, our bigger number is 10, and that was a negative. That's because our middle number was a negative 9. Okay, so that's just one of those things you can do to double check while you're doing these problems. Again, just like with the 3A Part 1 notes, you need to have your table and the work to get full credit for your homework. Otherwise, you're not showing your work, and if you don't show the work, you don't get full credit. So make sure you got your table down. All right, next. Negative 32. I need numbers that multiply to give me negative 32 and add to give me a positive 4. Okay, so multiply to give me negative 32 and add to give me 4. Now keep in mind, since our middle number is positive, all of our bigger numbers will be positive. Whatever the bigger number is here will be positive. So when I'm doing my table, I'm not going to do like a negative 16 times 2, even though that does give me negative 32, because this one would be, the bigger number would be negative, and that doesn't match with my problem here. The bigger number has to be positive. So just to kind of cut down on some of your work and save you a little bit of work in your table, that's just one of those things that I wanted to point out to you. But anyway, when we add these together, this is not our correct answer because this will give us 14. Okay, not 4, that's 14. So we go through some more factors. 3 doesn't work, but 4 does. So let's say negative 4 times 8. Now I'm not going to do negative 8 times 4 because, again, my bigger number has to be positive, so I'm just going to make my bigger number positive. Negative 4 plus 8, there we go. That's the answer we were looking for. So we put it in our parentheses, x minus 4, and that look more like a parenthesis, x minus 4 and x plus 8. Okay, let me just fix my parentheses here so it looks a little more like a parenthesis. Parenthesis, x plus 8, because that's a positive 8, x plus 8. And again, you could have those switched. X plus 8 could be first, x minus 4 could be second. That doesn't matter, but 8 has to be positive, 4 has to be negative. Okay, so there's B. We're going to do 2 more examples with you together. The last 2 I have done for you, so I'll talk you through those then. So looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me a negative 24 and add to give me negative 10. Very similar to the bell ringer. I see this mistake happen all the time. People say, all right, well, negative 6 times negative 4, negative 6 plus negative 4, there's my answer, negative 10. But that is wrong because same reason right here. A negative times a negative is not a negative. Negative times negative is positive. All right, so we don't want to make that mistake. We have to make sure that when we're doing our table down here, one of these 2 numbers is positive. And like I said, we can't just switch this. Negative 6 plus 4, that does give us negative 24, but then negative 6 plus 4 over here would end up giving us a negative 2. So that doesn't get us our answer now, okay? So just make sure you're very careful with your table. There are some like this that are deceiving and they try to trick you like that, but just make sure that you're careful with your table there. So what I'm going to do is, I know my bigger number has to be negative because my middle number is negative. So negative 12 times 2. Negative 12 plus 2, there's my answer, negative 10. So let's put it in our parentheses. X negative 12, so x minus 12. X positive 2, so x plus 2. Final answer, there we go. D, negative 45. Negative 12. Excuse me. So let's run through some examples, or run through some factors here. So 45, again, the common one we might want to go to right away is 9 and 5. Negative 9 times 5, but when we add these together, we're not going to get 12, right? We're going to end up with a negative 4, so that one's out, not my answer. So what else goes into 45? Well, let's start with, how about 3? Negative 3. Well, we don't want to do negative 3 times 15, remember, because we want our bigger number to be negative. We want it to match the middle sign here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch my signs. I'm going to say positive 3 and negative 15. 3 plus a negative 15. Again, this is a lot of calculator work. You're just plugging numbers into your calculator until you find the ones that work. Positive 3, negative 15, when we add those together, we get negative 12. That's what we were looking for. So there's my final answer, x plus 3, x minus 15. And again, like I said, you could have those switched. You don't need to write both of these down. I'm just showing you that you could have them in any order and it would still give you the same thing. Because negative 15 times 3 is 45, just like 3 times negative 15 is negative 45. So it doesn't matter the order that we multiply, but what does matter is that the 15 has the negative and the 3 has the positive. All right, the last 2 here I have done for you, so let's just follow along with my table. Yeah, we'll just pull this over here. So again, I started out with a negative 12 and a 4, but again, then I remembered, oh yeah, the middle number is negative, or the middle number is positive, so I want my bigger number to be positive. And you can see here that if you get the same number with a different sign, like we were looking for 8 and we ended up getting -8 first, all you have to do is flip the signs in your factors. Okay, that's all I did here was flip the signs in my factors. So this one did not work. -4 times 12 does. So x minus 4, x plus 12 is my final answer. Last one, F. Now look, this middle number here, there's nothing there. Well, there's nothing visible, but there is something there, and it's a 1. So when we're doing our table, we're going to make our table be a -56 for the last number and a -1 for the middle number. Okay, so we're looking for two numbers that will multiply to give me -56 and add to give me -1. So go ahead and run through some factors there of 56. See if you can get the answer. All right, so hopefully you were able to come up with the answer of -8 times 7. -8 times 7 is -56. -8 plus 7 is a -1. So there's my final answer, x minus 8, x plus 7, and we're finished. Okay, so again, very similar to the 2-3A Part 1 notes, but we did want to split those apart into two separate days because when the last number is positive, we have a certain type of answer. When the last number is negative, again, your signs will be different. And we will spend a day just practicing mixing all of these together, but we wanted to spend some time doing them separately just to show you that there is a little bit of a difference in those two factors. So again, like always, if you're confused on any of this stuff, if you have any questions, please let me know. Send me an email, send me a private comment, and I will get back to you.